Thank you all for coming. My job in the next 10 or 15 minutes is really to just remind everyone of some things that you probably already know, namely what to expect in terms of new drugs and new regimens to treat TB, and sort of when to expect them to the best of our ability to predict that. First, just a few words about the TB Alliance. The TB Alliance was founded in 2000 as a not-for-profit product development partnership, and the idea was to bring entrepreneurial, virtual approaches to developing new drugs and regimens to treat TB. And as Peter alluded to, over the last 13 years, this has really resulted in catalyzing the largest portfolio of TB drugs really in the history of TB drug development. This has happened through partnerships with every stakeholder imaginable. We try to work with everyone who has energy, interest, and knowledge to share, including governments, patients, certainly the biotech and pharma industries, NGOs, donors, and academia. And so our mission is to develop new, better drugs to treat TB. And we do that, as I said, by catalyzing global activities across a number of partners. But one of the bedrocks that's really important to us, and important to remember, is that all of the work that we do is aimed at developing new regimens that are affordable, that are adopted for use, and are made widely available. And one of the key points about making drugs widely available and adopted for use is having adequate diagnostics, both in terms of the disease as well as identifying drug susceptibility. And so there are lots of unmet medical needs across the entire spectrum of TB. And so, when we talk about drug-sensitive TB, we need simpler, shorter regimens. For MDR and XDR, we need, first of all, effective regimens, and then we need also for them to be shorter and safer and simpler. The HIV epidemic has had a huge impact on our patients as well, and the ability to co-administer any drug for TB with ARVs and other drugs used to treat concomitant diseases is incredibly important. Even in latent TB, we have therapy that's effective. However, we need to work to shorten it and simplify it as well. And finally, children, and I'm going to mention children a number of times because the TB Alliance, along with a number of other organizations, has really recently recognized the need to inject new energy into developing treatments to treat children with TB. And at the moment, we don't have any adequate formulations to appropriately dose children with TB, and we all know the diagnostic challenges associated with children. So we really like to make sure that we keep that aspect at the forefront of our mind as we're developing treatments and diagnostics. Now, Peter just alluded a few moments ago to the progress that's been made in the last 10 years, and I think this slide really is one example of the important excitement that's happened in the TB field in the last 13 years or so since the TB Alliance was founded. This is a list of all the drugs that are currently in development for TB across, not just the TB Alliance, obviously, across a number of partners. There are a couple of things to notice about this. First of all, it's exciting that there's lots of drugs on this, and so it's really kind of exciting to look at the possibilities of the future. And many of these are actually out in phase 2 and phase 3, so they're getting close. And that's part of the reason for this symposium, is to make certain we all understand the urgency around the approach of these new treatments. The other thing to notice about this slide is that with the exception of the fluoroquinolones and the rifamycins, none of these drugs have available, rapid, understood either phenotypic or genotypic DST testing available, and that's an immense amount of work that's going to have to happen for these to be rolled out publicly as well as to be studied appropriately. This slide is the TB Alliance pipeline slide for our programs. This excites us when we look at it because we have projects that span discovery all the way to late development, all of which I think are very important. Today we're focusing on the late development projects because these are the projects that will become available relatively soon and will be driving the need for further development of DSTs and diagnostics. And so just to highlight a couple, and then we'll talk about them more specifically, the REMOX TB study will be reading out relatively soon. This is a moxifloxacin-containing regimen. It obviously has significant impact on the need for diagnostics. We have new regimens. Our NCO02 study is finishing as we speak. That will have implications as well. And once again, I just want to mention that, that we're currently working on developing new formulations for pediatric TB. Once again, children need to be remembered in all of our development activities, whether it's new drugs or new diagnostics. So a word about REMOX TB. So this is a huge program. It's been a global phase 3 program that's had a number of stakeholders. As Peter mentioned, the results will be available imminently, the first quarter of next year. This is evaluating a 4-month regimen that's based upon moxifloxacin. And it really, I think, has the potential to be the first new regimen introduced in over 50 years. We think it has significant benefit. But one of the things to remember is that it's a moxifloxacin-containing regimen. We need to understand a lot about moxifloxacin resistance, the epidemiology of fluoroquinolone resistance. We either need to understand the epidemiology well enough to understand how to use REMOX, or we need to have a rapid DST available that can be used to identify patients appropriate to use the REMOX regimen. Moving on to other things that are in development, I just want to take a minute and talk about the TB Alliance's Unified Drug-Sensitive, Drug-Resistant Regimen Development Plan. And the idea here is to identify patients to include in clinical studies, to study based upon the drugs that they are sensitive to, that they have disease that is sensitive to drugs in the regimen. We are trying to get rid of labels such as drug sensitive and MDR. We're just trying to make certain that we understand that the disease a patient has is susceptible to the drugs that we want to study. To do that obviously requires adequate, rapid DST testing. And this is really the platform upon which we develop all of our clinical programs. And so one of those programs that I think is going to become really important to the TB community very soon is the PaMZ pathway. This is a regimen that currently is an 8-week study. That study is completed. We're just getting the data. If that study is successful, this regimen, PaMZ, will go forward into phase 3 and potentially become a new regimen available for patients with TB. This is very exciting, obviously. It really represents, I think, a move forward in terms of thinking. This NCO02 study was the first study that really crystallized our unified pathway to enroll both drug-sensitive and drug-resistant patients into the same protocol. But as you notice, this is a 3-drug regimen that has moxifloxacin and pyrazinamide, 2 drugs that have existing resistance. Therefore, the ability to identify patients who are susceptible to these drugs is critical, both in terms of developing the drug, in terms of clinical trials, as well as making it available once the clinical studies are finished and the regimen is approved. This is just a schematic of the NCO02 study. As I said, it's now complete. The data will be available very soon. And if we go forward into phase 3, the ability to identify pyrazinamide resistance in MDR patients is going to be critical. And once again, the ability to understand and identify fluoroquinolone resistance in communities will really be instrumental in terms of our ability to roll this out widely. The next sort of step in our unified development pathway is NCO03. This is a 2-week study. It's a phase 2A study. It also is just completing. We somehow managed to have all of our studies complete at the same time. This is looking at multiple regimens in a 2-week study to identify which regimens are the most appropriate to go forward into longer-term studies. This is sort of one of the ways we evaluate moving regimens forward. Once again, we think about all of our patients and all of our studies as having disease susceptible to the drugs being studied, not whether they're MDR or drug sensitive. This is the design of the study. The thing to notice about this, once again, it also includes regimens containing pyrazinamide. Our ability to identify patients who are susceptible and resistant to pyrazinamide is critical to our ability to continue to develop regimens such as these, and then once again, once they roll out, to be able to make them available. This study results are available. My colleague Dan Everett will be presenting it Saturday morning, and I think it's exciting. We probably will have regimens that will be exciting and really looking forward to moving them forward. But once again, the ability to identify patients who are appropriate for those clinical studies is critical. And so to sort of wrap up and to finish up, the bottom line is that there are lots of new drugs and regimens that will be available, coming onto the market in clinical studies very soon. So bedaquiline, we know, has been launched, and delamidate may be launched very soon. These are two drugs that are used in combination with existing regimens for MDR-TB. So neither of them really have any pre-existing resistance. The critical issue here is making certain that the underlying regimen to which these drugs are added provides adequate treatment and protection of the new drugs. To do that, you have to understand the resistance patterns of the strains that the patients are infected with. I've already mentioned the REMOX TB. Once again, the ability to understand, to surveil fluoroquinolone resistance and identify patients who are appropriate for amoxicillin-containing regimen is absolutely critical. PaMZ, same thing. We have pyrazinamide and we have moxifloxacin in the 3-drug regimen. Protecting PA824, which is one of our new drugs, from developing resistance, requires that we only treat patients who are sensitive to all of the drugs in that regimen. That program hopefully will be moving into phase 3 really quite soon. So with that, I'd like to pause a moment and thank all of our funders and supporters. We are obviously dependent upon partnerships, and those partnerships are both in terms of science as well as funding, and we're grateful for that. And I thank you for your time.